From Zimmer Labs, and this is finally the video for the Metal Master that I've been talking about forever. Sorry for the wait. I was waiting for one part to come in the mail, which I finally gave up on because it's been over 2 months and it's not here yet, so I'm just going to do the video without it. It's a small part, it's not a big deal. The glass eye on the Graflex, I'd ordered from MB Sabers one of the extended glass eye replacements. So it's just the glass part that goes inside of that metal ring, and instead of being thin like this, it's about this tall, and so you can insert it in there and have it act like a blade retention ring. I ended up going with a different option because obviously I couldn't wait any longer. So the backstory here is I built this for Mike. Mike wanted a no holds barred, all the way masterpiece Graflex, done, you know, to the best of my ability with all the bells and whistles. So he got this genuine vintage Folmer Graflex. It's a beautiful hilt, as you can see here on the pommel. It's got the patent number stamped on there. Even says the Folmer Graflex Corp. And this is the exact hilt Luke used in A New Hope. Not the specific one that he personally used, but it's the exact same version, model, manufacturing spec, probably made the same year. Very rare, really a nice hilt all around. It's got, you know, it's got a unique glass eye that's done in the Folmer Graflex style as opposed to the regular Graflex style, and it's in remarkable condition, all told, considering this is probably 50 years old. Thanks to Wonga for supplying the twin rivet belt clip here, which is more screen accurate and is really nice. And as you guys can see, I set it up in A New Hope style with the 7 grips, the no rivets, and the bubble strip with the Graflex clamp inverted, because this is what Mike wanted us to do. So that's the backstory with this guy. And chassis is MB Sabers Metal Master, the newest version with the spinning plasma gate, and I did absolutely everything I could to customize, upgrade, enlarge, and maximize this chassis, this design, and this installation. And I will go through all the little things that I did as we go, but just wanted to give you guys a look at the finish on this guy. The finish is something I'm really happy with. Check this out. This is what we started with here. Brass parts as they came from Shapeways. And what I did was patina all the brass and then sand and polish the brass to give it, you know, these darker recessed areas, to give it some contrast so that all the little details kind of pop out, because otherwise you don't get any of these dark areas and details. And you know, especially in this crystal chamber area, that's key. You got to have this stuff really kind of pop out, because otherwise you don't really see any of the details, and you can't really distinguish anything from, you know, whatever the background is from, you know, a separate part that's, you know, coming out at you. Then the stainless steel, the remainder is all stainless steel, except this is polished aluminum up top. The stainless steel parts, this is what they look like when you get them from Shapeways, and as you guys can see, this is a far cry right here from what they came looking like, what they started as. And that's just a matter of a lot of sanding, you know, probably a couple days worth of sanding to get from there to here. But you know, I think it's worth it in the end, because the finish on this guy is gorgeous, incredibly shiny, really nice looking, but also really rugged. I mean, this is very difficult to scratch because it's such a hard metal. Whereas if you were to order these parts in rhodium, you'd be paying 2 to 3 times as much for the parts, and they are really soft metal and really easy to scratch. And you know, rhodium looks more like chrome, so you wouldn't get this look if you did it in rhodium. You'd get like a chromy look, almost kind of, you know, it would almost look a little fake because it would be just too shiny. With this polished stainless steel finish, it's gorgeous, and it's rugged, it's resilient, and you know, it's not something Mike's gonna have to worry about it getting scratched up or tarnished. It's gonna stay looking like this as long as, you know, he takes reasonable care of it. So let's dive in. Alright, so from top to bottom, this is the MB Sabers emitter, the new MB Sabers emitter V1. I got that in black powder coat to begin with, and then all of the additional parts that you can get on Shapeways, like these little bits here, the button cover, the side button cover, the glass eye apparatus, and what have you, and then all of the additional rods and details and such. I sanded up and polished and installed all of those. But the critical point with this blade holder, I think, is to give it a two-tone effect. If you have the option of getting it in silver or black powder coat. If you get it in silver, the whole thing is just an untouched aluminum, like this section here. And that includes this section. So what I wanted to do was give it, you know, the look and feel of it being a lot of parts all built together. So I removed the powder coat from all of the top layers that stand taller off of the blade holder, and sanded them all down to match the stainless steel of the chassis, leaving the lower sections in this black powder coat still, so that it looks like all of these parts are, you know, in effect different pieces, different metal parts that are attached onto a lower inner housing. And doing that just gives it, you know, the allure, the illusion of it being more complicated than it really truly is. It makes it look like there's more going on there than there is, and it makes it look more sophisticated. The button setup is what you'd expect. The auxiliary button on the side right here, and then the main power button is underneath this button clip, or button cover right here. Maybe you guys can see the button. Inside we have the most recent stock Neopixel pogo pin onboard blade connector with 12mm extended length pogo pins to make that connection extra solid and extra easy to work. And inside of a custom made aluminum housing and a custom made polycarbonate plexiglass diffusing lens. Next up we've got the plasma gate section, and why don't we go ahead and turn her on. Love that. So for this section, I did get all of the different, shapeways parts and patina them and install them on the appropriate rods and what have you, and then added in as many of the pipe and duct details as I possibly could. So this guy is essentially a power infusing coolant section here, with the idea being that the first pipe here that goes into the system is where the either power or coolant is going into the system here, and then recirculates through these tubes and over into the next setup, and then through these tubes here and over into the next setup, and again through them, and then up and out of the system and into the plasma blade as it shoots out. Inside, you guys can see the plasma gate is just doing a slow 20% power pulse, and the magnetic plasma inductor motor here is doing a slow sequence that is unique to each blade. What I did for this guy was I used the Proffieboard's sequencing option to create these different motor profiles. So each blade has its own little profile. So that's what she does when she's not powered on. When she is powered on, you get 240 RPM, nice smooth spinning electromagnetic plasma gate here. The whole setup is running on a 2-ball bearing system. There's a set of ball bearings directly underneath the spinning parts, and then there's a set of ball bearings on the inside of them so that they're working around the axis of spin, and then the other one is working underneath it to support it from beneath, so that this is crazy smooth. And you can also change the speed of the spin startup and slow down, so you can make it ramp up or accelerate however fast or slow you want. And then what I did for most of the blades is have the blade lockup function make the plasma gate slow to a crawl. Like basically the lightsaber is being challenged by the lockup, and it's really taxing the lightsaber to continue to perform. And the only thing I couldn't manage to do is I couldn't make it go backwards. The plasma gate itself, inside of there is, instead of using the standard polycarbonate tube, I used a Gorilla Glass tube, which is clearer, stronger, and thinner, which allows the plasma inside of it to be wider and brighter, which is good because, you know, it's just more light, more detail. And what I did was I created essentially a tiny little mini Luxion blade inside there. You know, the blades that we used to use back before Neopixels existed, which were, you know, cellophane wrapping inside of a tube, and the cellophane was, you know, it's called a Corbin wrap, and basically it was just, you know, 5 to 20 to 30 wraps of cellophane packed into a tube and really carefully done. Gives you this glowing plasma look, and that's perfect for the plasma gate because it really looks the part. Next up, move down to the crystal chamber here, and this is also doing just a slow pulse, as you guys can see, until you turn it on. Then it's crazy bright, dual illuminated from top and bottom, and it matches whatever the blade is doing. I spent a whole lot of time working on the details inside of the crystal chamber. It's about a 1-inch quartz crystal. The crystal holder pieces are both sterling silver, and there's a whole lot of intricate antennas and tubes and pipes running throughout the whole thing, with the idea of essentially harnessing the power of the crystal. Like, for example, this tube right there in the back connected directly to the crystal. This is a coolant tube to essentially pump antifreeze into the system to cool the crystal so it doesn't overheat. And then over here we've got this guy doing the same thing on the back side directly into the crystal. And then this guy, this little radiator section here, is tapped directly into the crystal center, and that's where the power is getting sucked into. And then this is like a distributor block sending the power up into the plasma gate, and down here powering the actual generator that really fuels the lightsaber itself. Or at least that's the idea. I'm not sure if it actually works, but we could pretend. A lot of time goes into all these little greebles. These are probably the best part, probably the most fun part. And then I did a lot of, hopefully you guys can see it, up in the top area up here, a lot of photo etched brass inlay parts to just add extra detail. Then this section is the main radiator crystal chamber coolant section, and this is all stainless steel laser cut fins. You have the option of building a Metal Master using Shapeways versions of these parts, or the laser etched, not laser etched, sorry, the laser cut versions of them. And the laser cut versions are just so much better because they're nice and thin and really, really intricate and precisely cut, and all the little bits that go in between them are all also laser cut, so that they're all identical in size, so that when you actually assemble this setup, the whole thing is just totally perfect, spaced perfect, comes together perfect. Everything is just really nice. It's a nice fit. I've built these in the past where before the laser cut parts were even available, and I had to cut these little parts myself. And you know, with a bit of practice you can get pretty good at it, but even on my best day, each of these little tiny parts that go in between the laser cut fins, you're gonna have some slight variation when you're cutting them by hand. So even on your best day, it's never gonna look this perfect. So it's really nice to be able to get all these little tiny itty bitty parts pre-cut for you, so that when you assemble them, it just comes together like absolutely gorgeous. We move down to the main power section of the saber. This is where the Proffieboard is, the recharge port, main power switch here. Get the OLED screen battery meter. Tells you what the battery's doing. This little blinking light here is actually a blade indicator light. So whatever color it is doing is the color that your blade's going to be. So if we toggle to the next one, this is ANH. So it's going to be a really cool white, slight blue color to the blade. So that's what you're getting there. Purple blade, purple light. Green blade, green light indicator. Yellow, red. TFA, so we're back to blue. Just basically just to indicate and tell you on the fly what color the blade's going to be. You don't have to guess. Then the next thing I added, this is where the customizations really begin. This detail greeble part you can order from Shapeways in two ways, one with a USB cutout and one without. But I didn't want to put USB on this guy because this is just too delicate, too much going on inside of here for a USB to be plugged in and risk it getting, knocked, jostled, kicked, whatever. So I wanted to do a MagSafe connector, so that's what you're looking at here. So now to access the Proffieboard and the SD card, to program it, to upgrade the software, whatever, you simply USB cable to this MagSafe and then all set. Which is great because that means you no longer have to worry about taking this cover off in order to access the Proffieboard, which is hanging out underneath. So next up, let me show you guys the plasma gate kill switch. Now this is something that I wanted to add because I am opposed to putting electric motors in lightsabers usually because it's just an extra drain on the battery. And, generally it doesn't add enough to make it worthwhile, but Mike wanted it, and in this specific lightsaber, I think it's well worth it. It's a really excellent extra feature. But I wanted to give him the ability to turn it off. After perusing the whole chassis looking for a good spot to hide the off switch, I ended up opting for using one of these little brass decorative greebles here. So this larger top one is now the toggle switch. All you have to do is just slide it down. If you slide it to the right like that, plasma gate turned off. Turn it back on. Back off. So there's a little hidden button right there for you, Mike. Next up, the next kind of, this is not a major modification. This is a little minor modification, but I was pretty happy with it. The battery indicator down here, this is a LED lens essentially, and this is what it looks like. It's just a flat, simple polycarbonate lens, and what it does is it catches the light from an LED that's in the middle and shoots it out to the sides so that you can see it all the way around the bottom of the pommel here. Problem is with this design that the design right here only has 3 visible lens sections, here, here, here. But on the hilt itself, there are 4 holes where the light can come out. So when I started putting this together, I realized that this section back here was just going to be an empty hole if I used the standard lens. So what I did was I fabricated my own, using this as a template, but adding an additional side down here, a 4th side. I was able to make sure that all of the sections down here actually had LED lens going on, so there's no more holes now. And what this is, it's programmed to be a battery indicator. So depending on the voltage of the battery inside, this is going to give you a certain color. It's, as you can see right now, it's a cyan, which is full battery, full, and then the next step down is, well, actually the fullest 4.2 volts is white, and then it goes to cyan. No, then it goes to blue, then it goes to cyan, then it goes to yellow, then to red. So if you're getting towards yellow or red, it's time to think about recharging the battery. But that's just, it's just a little extra detail as far as decoration and accent lighting goes, but it actually serves a purpose, which is nice. The next semi-major modification that I made here is, rather than going with the standard 28mm speaker that the Metal Master is designed to accept, I opted for a 31mm speaker. And the reason I did so is because when I was, first building this, I looked at it and it became obvious to me that there was enough room for it. So this is 28mm speaker that you're supposed to put in there. There's a 31mm. And as you guys can see, this is a significantly bigger speaker. It doesn't sound like a big difference when you say it's 3mm bigger. But when you actually look at it, this is 30% larger than this. So that means it's going to make a lot more sound. And it's going to hit, higher and lower frequencies really well. So what I did was, I installed the 31mm speaker, but in doing so, then this part right here was not long enough and the speaker was sticking out too far. So I contacted Martin and asked him to do a custom part run for me, and he was generous enough to post this up on Shapeways for me. And this is an extended bottom speaker cover piece, which is 2 or 3 millimeters taller. Not a huge difference between the standard part that you would get and this part. This is just a little bit longer, long enough to actually cover the speaker all the way to the end. And so now it looks just perfect, fits great, fills the whole bottom, and you get a much bigger speaker in the Metal Master now. It's also still able to allow the steel rods that pass right by it up into the chassis to hold the board cover and battery cover in place. Like those parts can still work, as you can see. The next thing I did that I was really happy with as far as modification is I decided that after kind of looking everything over, it seemed to me that a larger battery could be squeezed into this guy. The way this is designed, it is set up to take an 18650 battery, and it's designed to be removable. So there would be a plastic tray section right here, and you could just kind of pop this battery in and out as you like and swap it on the fly. But after talking to Mike a bit, we decided that it made more sense to switch this out and go with a 2700 battery in here. So this is the guy that I ended up installing. So this is a 4200 milliamp hour 30 amp Sanyo battery versus the standard 3000 milliamp 10 to 15 amp battery. So this is a much stronger, higher discharge and better capacity battery. The only sacrifice is that it is not swappable on the fly, meaning that if this battery gets drained, it needs to be recharged before the saber can work again. So there is that one downside to the swap, but for me, I thought it was worth it, and Mike was on board, so I wanted to do that modification, and it ended up working just great. It's a perfect fit. The other thing that's nice about it is that in doing that modification, it's not something that's necessarily permanent. So Mike, if you decide down the road that you want to make this hot swappable on the fly, we can go back to the 18650, and all I would have to do is take the battery out and install the little plastic inserts that otherwise would have been in there. So nothing about that is a lifetime permanent choice. If you end up deciding that you want to go with a different battery, we can do that. The next kind of cool addition that this guy has as a first is new Neopixels. Anytime I get windows like this in any lightsaber, I always want to add a strip of Neopixels to it. It's just like unconscious decision. I always want to do that, and it's either a Cylon or a color cycle effect that's going to go on in there. But with this guy, and especially with the larger battery, there just wasn't room to fit Neopixels in there. So what I did was I jumped on the web I did a little research to see if I could find something that I could actually make fit. Well, these are your standard WS2812 Neopixels, and as you guys can see, you know, these are just obviously way too big to fit inside of there. These are SK6812 Neopixels, 3535s. These are the ones that I usually use for just about everything, because they're much smaller, much easier to use, they fit in more places, and they're equally as bright as these. But even these were way too big to fit in there. So what I did was I found a new toy. These guys right here, these are WS2820Cs, and they are 2020s as opposed to 3535s, meaning they're 2mm by 2mm square, meaning these things are tiny. And the other really cool thing about these guys is how densely packed they are. For every 5 of these standard 3535 pixels, you get 10 of these guys in the same amount of space, meaning that this is a 300 pixel per meter strip, whereas these are 144 pixels per meter, meaning that this guy, you can pack twice as many pixels into these little windows as you could with standard Neopixels, which makes the animation that much smoother, that much more detailed, that much better. And as you can see, they are more than bright enough. And I don't think they're quite as bright as standard 3535 or 5050 pixels, but they're not far off. You know, like this is a standard one in here, there's 2 of them. This looks just about as bright to me. Compare that, that. Pretty close. But using those little tiny 300 pixel per meter strips enabled me to add these accents in there where I otherwise could not have. Let's see. What else are we forgetting about? I think that may actually be just about it, as far as the setup and decorative nature of things. Oh, the other thing I was going to tell you guys about was the motors. I did actually at one point decide that I wanted to try out one of the other motors to see if I agreed that this stage 3 was the best motor to use, because for me this is plenty fast, but you know, faster might be better. So what I did was I picked up a stage 2 and a stage 4 motor. So this is the stage 2 motor that I wanted to try out just because I wanted to see how it would work with the higher RPMs. This one is rated to go 1200 RPMs plus or minus 120, whereas the stage 3, that's the recommended motor, is rated to go 240 RPMs plus or minus 120. Well, as you can see, it won't even spin on slow, which is a problem. But it cruises. And now, of course, the last and probably most important part is making this into a lightsaber. So we want to install it into the Graflex, which is very simple. Simply split the Graflex and take the glass eye out. Insert chassis and reinstall glass eye. Not all the way though, just enough to hold the chassis in place, but loose enough for the blade plug to slide in. Nice shine through on the glass eye. Now, take the glass eye out and insert the blade. Retighten the glass eye. So that's the retention. Second blade is A New Hope. This is the unstable blade. Electricity blade. Turbine blade. Jedi fire blade. Purple Mace Windu-esque blade. And that's the full blade array. Back to the beginning. I'm going to turn up the sensitivity a tiny bit. But that is everything, I think, in a nutshell. It's a very long video, I think, but worth it. This saber deserves, I would say, a full half hour, 45-minute video, whatever it's turned out to be. Mike, I hope you like it. Definitely was a lot of fun to build, and definitely it's good practice as far as taking a Metal Master and, you know, kind of pushing the boundaries as far as is reasonable. So let me know what you think, Mike, and thank you again, of course, and thank you to the rest of you guys for hanging out and watching this video. Like I said, I know it was a long one. Stay tuned, I've got an MK1 coming up next, and then a Corbanth / 89 Sabers Obi-Wan episode 3 and Corbanth 89 Sabers Luke Return of the Jedi V2 or V1 maybe. Alright guys, thanks again for watching.